Thank you for joining us. The UN Human Rights Chief has urged Ethiopia's government to let monitors into Tigray. It wants to investigate reports of abuses that could amount to war crimes. Michelle Bachelet says killings and sexual violence are reported to be taking place in the northern region. Ethiopia declared victory after launching an offensive against the Tigray People's Liberation Front in November. Let's go to Malcolm Webb in Nairobi for us, who's covered this conflict in Tigray extensively for us. Malcolm, getting access to Tigray has been extremely difficult. You yourself haven't been able to get into Tigray. Talk us through what's been happening there on the ground and these reports of the presence of Eritrean troops who may be committing atrocities against civilians.
Well, in the weeks and months that have followed that declaration of victory that came from the Ethiopian government at the beginning of December, more information's been coming out and a growing number of reports of atrocities committed by all of the different forces involved in the conflict. Just last week, the rights group Amnesty International published a report. It said that based on dozens of testimonies of people that in the town of Aksum in late November, it said that Eritrean and Ethiopian forces were responsible for indiscriminate shelling of civilian areas of the town. And then it said that Eritrean troops had entered the town and massacred about 800 men, civilian men and teenage boys. Eritrea has previously denied that its troops are in Tigray, but that contradicts numerous reports that have come from there. It also refuted Amnesty's report. The government of Ethiopia has said that it is investigating various reports of rights abuses across the region. A lot of these reports were echoed in things in Michelle Bachelet, the UN rights chief, in her statement that came out just a few hours ago, referring to the reports of mass killings, extrajudicial killings, widespread sexual and gender-based violence, and then recent reports of protesters being shot dead as well.
And also reports, Malcolm, of fighters deliberately trying to starve civilians, raising concerns about food shortages and even a possible famine. Is aid getting into the region? Food aid?
Well, the humanitarian organisations do have some access to some of the people they say they need to help in some areas. But they say that that access is inadequate. Just a few days ago, the UN's Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs was saying that the humanitarian situation continues to deteriorate. They say about 1 million people are in need of food support. The Ethiopian government in the last couple of months has frequently talked about opening up access, or now guarantees access to the whole region. But according to the UN and other humanitarian organisations, that access still isn't adequate, and the situation for people there is getting worse.
Thank you for that, Malcolm Webb, live there in Nairobi. With more on the situation in Ethiopia's northern Tigray region. Now, according to an Amnesty report, Eritrean troops killed hundreds of people over 2 days in November in Tigray. The report says unarmed men and boys were targeted in the streets of the city of Aksum. A priest says at least 800 people were buried. But the number of deaths can't be verified as communications have been blacked out and access to the region restricted. An estimated 60,000 people escaped into neighboring Sudan. Ravina Samdasani is a spokeswoman for the UN Human Rights Office. She says there needs to be accountability from the Ethiopian government.
We, as well as several other organizations, have managed to establish, through corroborating information, that Eritrean troops have indeed been involved in many of the most severe violations of human rights that have taken place on the ground, including extrajudicial killings. On the ground right now, unfortunately, there are no independent human rights monitors. The High Commissioner for Human Rights has been pushing for independent access for us, for the UN Human Rights Office, to the Tigray region, so that we're able to carry out an objective assessment of the facts on the ground. Failing that, all we are seeing is very serious allegations and reports and blanket denials and finger pointing on all sides. I've seen reports of quite strong cases, quite a lot of cases of sexual and gender-based violence. We've received reports of some 136 cases of rape that have been reported. But of course, as you may be aware, in cases of sexual violence, the number of figures that are actually reported tend to be the tip of the iceberg because many of these cases do not go reported. We're also seeing door-to-door searches of individuals. We are seeing continued killings and continued fightings in many parts of Tigray. What we are seeing so far is that there is limited access. Humanitarian organizations need to be able to establish that the aid is actually reaching those who need it most. Human rights organizations need to be able to establish the facts on the ground to be able to help towards accountability for these violations.
In other world news, a tsunami warning has been issued for parts of the east coast of New Zealand's North Island.